right, Gary Lee Fellenbaum, the defendant in this case, has pled guilty to first-degree murder for the torture and beating of Scotty McMillan, resulting in his death. Gary Lee Fellenbaum has pled guilty to aggravated assault for the beatings he administered to Scotty's older brother, Ryan. Gary Lee Fellenbaum has pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, because when he murdered Scotty McMillan, he did it with his girlfriend, Jillian Tate. And the defendant, Gary Lee Fellenbaum, has pled guilty to possessing instruments of crime, because as he beat and killed Scotty McMillan, he did it with various implements. The defendant has been sentenced to life imprisonment for murder, with a consecutive 10 to 20 years. Gary Lee Fellenbaum is going to spend the rest of his life in jail for torturing and killing Scotty McMillan. And in God's good justice, he is going to spend the rest of eternity in hell for what he did to this child. My name's Tom Hogan. I'm the Chester County District Attorney. I'll speak to you briefly about this case. Then you'll hear from Chief Kurt Martinez, who will talk to you about being one of the first responders. And then you'll hear from Mike Noon, first assistant, who led this prosecution. You're already familiar with the facts of this case. Gary Lee Fellenbaum, the defendant, was living in a trailer with his wife and his girlfriend at the same time. Scotty McMillan and Ryan McMillan were the sons of his girlfriend. And over the course of about a week, he systematically tortured and beat this 3-year-old child to death. Now, this was filed originally as a death penalty case. We don't seek the death penalty often in Chester County. We reserve it for the worst of the worst. This defendant was the worst of the worst, and he was going to get the death penalty. We had hours of his confession. We had both his wife and his girlfriend cooperating against him. We had the condition of Scotty McMillan's body. A 3-year-old child covered with bruises from days of being beaten. That body made doctors and nurses, hardened investigators, weep when they saw it. Our only problem with getting the death penalty in this case, we've been getting 12 good Chester County citizens to be able to sit through the psychological horror of witnessing what happened to this child. So why was the defendant allowed to plead guilty and get life imprisonment? One reason. In order for us to go to trial to get the death penalty for Gary Lee Fellenbaum, we would have had Ryan, Scotty's older brother, testify as a victim and as a witness. And while I was perfectly happy to pursue the death penalty against Gary Lee Fellenbaum, it wasn't in my heart to make Ryan go through the agony of reliving the murder of his little brother by forcing this case to trial. So the great irony of this plea is that Gary Lee Fellenbaum's life was spared because of a child, because the people up here did not want to hurt Ryan. Gary Lee Fellenbaum's life was saved by one of the child that he beat. Gary Lee Fellenbaum is proof that there is evil in this world. If you read Dante's Inferno, they talk about 9 circles of hell. And the 9th and worst circle is reserved for traitors, for treachery. The 7th circle is actually reserved for murderers, but just regular murderers. The good people of Chester County would like there to be a 10th circle of hell. 10th circle of hell reserved for anyone who would beat, torture, and kill an innocent child. Gary Fellenbaum should be sentenced to the 10th circle of hell.